Yay! Hopefully we are live and hopefully you can hear me. And hopefully this is all working exactly as it should be. As Facebook seems to have a bit of a hard time with these Q&As over the last couple of months. So let's I'm hopeful. I have my fingers crossed that this is going to be actually work as exactly as it should. And everything is going to be perfect and amazing. And we will be able to get all of your sleepy questions answered. Fingers crossed anyway. Let's hope. So if it is Q&A time, this is time for you to get all your sleepy questions answered. If you've already submitted a question, that's great. I have that here. If you haven't submitted a question and you do have a sleepy question, you can just pop that here in the comments and I will see that, and I'm going to answer as many as we possibly can within the time that we have. So we have just about an hour. So there's plenty of time for answering plenty of questions. So I hope you've had a good, I think the last time I was able to successfully do Q&A was probably a couple of months ago. The last one was complete disaster. So I hope you've had a good couple of months. And let's see what questions that we have. Great. I see Megan. I see your question is already here. Yay. I'll start telling you a little bit about me, and I'm going to get into the good stuff. My name's Rebecca Mickey. I am a Seattle-based children's sleep consultant and author, and I work with families who have children under 6 years old. So big, broad range of ages and issues that I work with. I'm a gentle, no-cry sleep consultant. Really, honestly, truthfully, a gentle, no-cry sleep consultant. Not a fake no-cry sleep consultant who says that they don't do cry it out, but then when you actually look at it, they do cry it out. Why do they do that? The way that I work is that you pick your child up whenever you need to pick them up, and you soothe them however you need to soothe them, because you know your child better than anyone else on the planet, and so you know when they need help. Because there are some times when it's just that kind of like the noisy, fussy, not really a cry, and then there are some times when it's a cry. I don't ever want parents feeling uncomfortable and want you to pick up your child whenever you need to. Our Q&A is something that it's an opportunity for you to get all of your sleepy questions answered. There are no silly questions when it comes to sleep, because everything is really valid, and I'm quite sure there'll be somebody else who has a very similar question to you. So every single question is valid. So I'm going to have a sip of coffee because it's definitely, and my Christmas mug, which I use all year, is now sort of back in season, which is nice to know. I need a giant mug of coffee for doing a Q&A. So Megan has a question. I have a question. My 14.5-month-old just went down to one nap after fighting the last nap of the day. Perfect. That's a perfect age for dropping down to one nap. Average is about 15 months. So you're right there. She used to sleep. She's waking up 3 times a night. She used to sleep through the night. Okay. So what you may want to try doing is, when we move to one nap because we need less sleep during the day, but it can take like a little while for this to go from 2 naps to 1 nap, for it to be enough sleep during the day. If you were having 2 naps, you were having your first nap of the day, which would have been a certain amount, and then you would have had that second nap, even though sounds like you're very, very ready to drop that. But you're still missing out on a little bit of sleep there, and it can take a while for that, the amount of sleep that was needed in the afternoon to kind of get into that first nap. And then we're dealing with some overtiredness, and we've got a very, very long awake period in the afternoon, overstimulation, overtiredness, and then both of those things can cause more wake-ups to happen at nighttime. So you want to probably bring your bedtime a little bit earlier. Now, not too early, because we don't want it being treated as a nap, but a little bit earlier is completely fine. 30 minutes earlier, 45 minutes earlier. I wouldn't go any earlier than 45 minutes earlier than normal, because then you may be getting sort of not quite so overtired, which makes it really hard, one, for falling asleep, and then for remaining asleep. Lots more wake ups. And then you want to try and lengthen out your one nap as well a little bit if you can. Now, we don't want to get 2 naps worth of sleep into one nap, because your child has dropped down to one nap because they need less daytime sleep. So we can't expect there to be all of that, potentially up to 3 hours in one nap, but you may be getting an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe is going to be perfect for your child, and that's going to be perfect. It's a good bit. So it's used to go to bed at 8, but seems too long of a wake window, so we switched to 7. Now, if you're going as well now an hour early, that potentially could be causing more wake ups as well. It's such a it's such a science, and it's really annoying because it may be that this is actually causing more wake ups if you're going an hour early, because she could be then treating that as a nap. Because daytime sleep, nighttime sleep, managed by different areas of the brain. And so if you're still in nap mode, you're still in nap mode. If you're in nighttime mode, you're in nighttime mode. And what we want to do is we want to have the beginning of our night that kind of catches into that nighttime sleep. If you are if you're still in nap mode, then what can potentially happen, may not be happening, but what potentially could happen is you're going down at the beginning of the night, but actually it's a nap. Then you'll have a nap, and then you'll have a wake up, and it's really challenging to get your child back down to sleep then. And they may keep waking up, and then you can, and then your naps, was a nap, and then your nighttime sleep does not start till much later. And this is really, really tricky if you are moving to one nap, because your child is really tired. We've gone from potentially having a 4-hour stretch of awake before going down to probably a much longer. So what I would try doing would be to actually move your first nap, your nap, a little bit later in the day, and let's try lengthening it out. So then your afternoon awake period is a little bit shorter, and then your child is not so tired and overstimulated and all of those things come bedtime. And then you may be able to be getting into sort of a 7:15, 7:30 bedtime, and that worked great. So what you want to do is you want to make sure, as you're dealing with now this extra overtiredness, that you're working on really unwinding beforehand. So a walking wind down is a must. Scoop your child up from whatever it is that they're doing and just walk around. Just walk around until you get started with your nap time routine. 5-10 minutes, anything up to 15 minutes, depends on your child, could be perfect for a walking wind down. And it's just going to be walking around the house with a kind of a slow rhythmic walk, and then end where you're going to begin your nap time routine. Now, a walking wind down is a great way of extending an awake period if you need to kind of push your child's nap a bit later. A walking wind down is a great way to do that. It's a slow rhythmic walk where you're looking out the windows, you're looking at pictures on the walls, you can go outside if you want to, but you just you're scooping your child up and you're just walking around. This helps their brain relax a little bit more, and it's a great way of kind of managing some overtiredness. If you're dealing with a child who's really overtired or overstimulated, a walking wind down is a must. A lot of children who have more intense temperament, a walking wind down is really, really helpful for them as well. Before nighttime sleep, definitely before naps. And that's a great way, because you then may be able to, if you start a walking wind down when you were going to start your nap time routine, then that may be you're going to start your nap time routine 10-15 minutes later than you would have done, and you've pushed a little bit more, and it doesn't seem like very much. A lot of times we think, well, we've got to push later, it's got to be then pushing really, really, really late. It doesn't have to be. You can just push a little bit. A child who's on one nap is going to be napping at around midday. That's when we want that one nap to be, we want that one nap to be sort of around lunchtime. At the awake period at the end of the day after will depend on the child. Some children will like to have a longer awake period before their nap. Others will like it after. Most children will have a longer awake period in the morning. If you feel that your child is getting to this kind of lull, when they would have normally taken a morning nap, then what's probably happening there is because they're used to napping at whatever time, 10, 9, whatever time that was. They're used to napping at about that time. They're going to show you tired signs, and they're going to get tired because they're used to falling asleep at that time. It's just if you are used to falling asleep at the same time every single day or every single night, that's when you're then going to get tired, because the brain then thinks, oh, we're going to go to sleep soon, and it starts getting ready to go to sleep. Much like, remember before kids, when you'd go to bed at a certain time during the week, but then on the weekend you could stay up later, but you'd still kind of get that really tired when you're expecting your body, your brain were expecting to go to sleep at that time. And so you're just sort of like, it's getting ready to do it. Even though you're staying up later, you still can come into this lull. And if your child is showing you the tired signs because they're used to napping at that time, does not necessarily mean they need to nap at that time. They're shifting their sleep, and we've got to help them shift that sleep. So you can push that a little bit later as need be, so that you're pushing towards lunchtime. If you're pushing towards lunchtime, you really want to be mindful with naps that you are not napping them through lunchtime where they could be hungry. Because we don't want your child then waking up early because they're hungry, because they're used to eating at noon. And if you get them down for a nap at 11:30, and then they're still the same as with sleep, where we get tired at around the same times. It's the same with food. We get hungry for breakfast, lunch and dinner every day because we're expecting to eat at that time. If your child is expecting to eat at noon and they are sleeping, they're still going to get that rumbly tummy because their stomach is expecting to eat, and that can cause a short nap. So you want to have milk beforehand, you want to have a snack beforehand, or even an early lunch, and then a snack or a lunch after. So definitely give your child a food beforehand. A food is a great way as well, is if you're getting that kind of tiredness, let's say about 10, and you're not going for a nap at 10, that is then going to be snack time. If you're kind of getting this lull, let's get some good energy that can then really help you then to be able to keep going until your nap time. Walking wind down, nap time routine, you've had your snack beforehand, and then hopefully you're getting a good nap there. Nice long nap. How long is a nice long nap? I think anything over an hour is a good nap, but we want more. Chances are you want more than an hour if your child has gone from 2 naps down to 1 nap. Hour and a half, 2 hours, it's probably pretty good. 2-hour nap I think is really good for a 1 nap. And then bring your bedtime a little bit earlier. Again, afternoon time and then evening time as well. Food can be really helpful. Some good healthy foods, healthy snacks, which are going to give your child energy, can be really great for keeping your child going. So if you see them kind of getting into this sort of like they're crashing, getting into this kind of real big lull, that's perfect time for a snack, just to sort of boost them up with a little bit of energy to keep them going. Some sleep inducing foods will be a very good snack to have at that kind of late in the day. If you, depending on what time you have your dinner, but I like to have sort of dinner and then having some awake time, and then a second dinner or snack before bed, and then going down for bed. Especially with this kind of age, 14.5 months can be quite sort of picky when it comes to food. So definitely having a little bit of a snack before bed. Think breakfast foods when you're thinking of sleep inducing foods. So yogurt's really good. If you're thinking like a bagel with some cream cheese maybe is really good, or some peanut butter is going to be good. Oatmeal is great. Bananas are great. They're a good sleep inducing food as well. You could have some oatmeal, smush some banana in there, put some warm milk, and that's the trifecta of sleepy goodness right there. It's warm milk, oats are really good, and bananas are really good as well for sleep. So that's a really good snack, and it's a great way of then going from snack to then starting a nighttime routine or even a nap time routine. Is a really great way of getting started with that, because your child was physically still if they've been sat having a snack. And then that's great, because that's half the battle with toddlers, to get your child to actually physically slow down so that they can actually fall asleep. So that's a great way of doing it, is having some get just start with a snack for either nap time or for night time. Could be really, really helpful for toddlers because then they're physically still. Then you can scoop them up, do a wind down, walk in, wind down, and then go straight into your routine. They've spent quite a long time physically still. And then hopefully sleep will be a little bit easier for them because they were still. Because that's half the battle with toddlers is if you just stopped moving, you'd probably be able to fall asleep. But toddlers don't like to stop moving. They like to move. If you've met a toddler, you know this. You definitely know this. Okay. Working in your daytime, that will help with your nighttime. But when you can expect things to get kind of wonky as you make changes with sleep, and then you'll sort of fall into your new normal. But it can take 2 or 3 weeks for you to then sort of get back into how things work. So if you've made a change within the last week or so with sleep, it can feel really, really wonky, and that's really, really fine. Normal, completely normal. Okay, let's see. Heather has a question. My daughter is 2. She used to sleep all night, but the past 6 months she's been waking up between 2 and 3, getting into bed with us and staying awake for a couple of hours before falling back asleep. Any tips? She goes to bed between 8 and 9 and takes a 2 to 3 hour nap during the day. Okay, so she has a split night where she's getting a kind of big chunk of sleep, awake period, big chunk of sleep, awake for the day, and then she's getting a big chunk of sleep in the middle of the day, which is her nap. So actually split nights is something that historically humans have done, probably for the majority of humankind. Have we had split nights? It seems to be a pretty normal way of sleeping, because we used to go to bed when it got dark, and then we would have some awake time in the middle of the night, which would often be kind of family time, and then back asleep, and then up in the morning. And your 2-year-old Heather has that luxury of being able to nap. Not all of us have that luxury, but she does have that luxury of being able to nap. And if she's obviously getting enough sleep between the beginning of the night, that second part of her night, that second night's sleep, and her nap, she's getting enough sleep because she's been doing this for a while. So the way that we then, if we want to get more nighttime sleep, we need to reduce the sleep somewhere else. So that may be that you're going to reduce your nap down a little bit. And I would start by just limiting it to the 2 hours initially, and let's see how that does, because that could have a really huge impact on then. You may notice that the wake up happens a little bit later, or it's shorter, but it's going to take, because this has been going on for a while, the longer you've been in a habit, the longer it's going to take to change. So, and you need to have a little bit of a deficit with that nap before you're going to notice that added onto your nighttime. So I would limit your nap to the 2 hours initially, and then see what that does then with the nighttime. But it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks, I think, before you see any real positive change there. So just hang in there, and then just snacks, always snacks, because she's going to we've got a deficit because we've not letting her get as much sleep during the day, so she's going to be more tired during the day. So snacks should hopefully help as it then sort of works on adjusting. It's like sort of changing for jet lag. We have to sort of gradually shift. So I definitely think you'll get there, but just may take a little bit of time. So hang in there, and just deal with your night times exactly as you have been. I'm not sure if you're wanting to stop the bed sharing or not. I'd not necessarily think that now is the best time for doing that, as you're making some other changes. If you're then getting a bit of an easier time with sleep, then you could think about doing that. But I wouldn't do it just yet. Let's just get more sleep at night time. Then you never know. If we're changing that awake time that's happening during the night and we're reducing that down and eliminating it, you may not need to do anything with trying to stop bed sharing, because it just may naturally happen. And that's easier than trying to do something. If you do nothing is obviously much easier, and I like to make things easy. Parenting's hard enough. Let's not make this any trickier than it needs to be. Amanda has a question. My 11.5-month-old is finally doing good with 2 naps. Whoop, whoop, whoop. 3 hours total daytime sleep. Amazing. That's textbook perfect, but wakes up ridiculously early every morning. He wakes up around 5 every day, which puts his bedtime at 7:30 every day, even stretching his awake window to 4 hours. How can I get him to sleep later? Okay. We do have the early wake up cure, which helps you identify exactly why. So I'll tell you, let's see if we can identify why. Chances are your child is getting enough sleep. Sounds like they're 3 hours total daytime sleep. It's textbook perfect. And we all seem to, especially when we're looking at 234 with 3 hours daytime sleep gives us that 12-hour day. But you're obviously having a longer day because you're having a shorter night. Whereas in fact, everything, 234, a lot of what you read online is aiming for a 12-hour night. Whereas in fact, that's not actually the amount of sleep that children are getting at nighttime. Let me just check my little piece of paper that I keep right next to my desk here, because this is something that we have to look at a lot. So a 12-month-old will only be getting, average is 10.25 hours of sleep a night. That is the average amount of sleep for a child, for a 12-month-old, with napped about 2.5 hours during the day. That's the average. That's a recent study that was done, I think, a couple of years ago. And it looked at a lot of studies, and this is what the average for that age was. So if you're getting that amount of sleep at nighttime, if your child is not tired, is not sleep deprived, the only way that you can shift to sleeping later is to shift their entire schedule. So that means that they're going to be going down to bed later, and they're going to be napping a little bit later, and they're going to be getting up a little bit later then as well. So I think because it's looking like everything's looking really kind of good with your awake times and the amount of sleep that your child is getting, that may be the way forward. And so the way that you'd do this is to shift your bedtime just a little bit by about 15 minutes. Give it 3 or 4 nights, because a morning wake up is one of the hardest things to change, just because it takes so darn long. Which is pretty miserable. It takes weeks for you to see results, unfortunately. So you want to go have your 15 minutes later, and then hopefully then you'll get that later start to the day. Another thing you can do is not actually start your day until your acceptable wake up time, which is going to be 15 minutes later, because you've gone down to bed 15 minutes later. So that's going to be staying in the dark. You can go into your child, you can pick them up, you can feed them, you can hang out with them. That's all good. That's not a problem. But you don't want to get up and start the day, because there's a big hormonal shift that happens when we do that. We want to delay that as long as possible. So you want to stay in the bedroom in kind of sleep mode, nighttime mode, until that acceptable wake up time, and then you're going to get up. So if you're shifting your bedtime by 15 minutes, your morning time is going to, so if you know, okay, they get this amount of sleep, so if they're getting sort of, whatever, 9.5, 10 hours, then great. Then you know sort of if your bedtime is this time, what time then your wake up time, get up time needs to be. And then you're going to just keep shifting. It takes a while. Really does take a while. So hang in there. Sleeps around night. Yeah, that's honestly completely normal. So the average is 10.25, but you get a range of normal. And do I have I don't have my notes here of range of normal, but it's something like nighttime sleep. The sort of the window of normal for nighttime sleep for a year old is probably between like 8 and 14 hours per night. That's the range of normal. And we want to look at how much sleep it is that your child needs, so that we can then help them to get the best possible sleep. So he wakes up this morning at 4:45. We stay in the dark, get up until 6. This will be awake time, and she started at 6. You're probably not going to be able to hang out until that time. He's probably going to be climbing the walls ready to get out of the room. You want to look at what you're getting now. So if your normal wake up time is 5 and you're pushing your bedtime later, you're not going to get up until 5:15. If you pushed your bedtime 15 minutes, your awake time is 15 minutes. So your 5:15 would then be your get up time. later if you can, by all means, that will definitely help, but don't feel that you have to, because it can just get a bit too much. You want to wait until as near to your acceptable wake up time as possible. If your acceptable wake up time is 6 a.m, then, but at 5:30, after being awake for 30 minutes, you're all kind of like climbing the walls and it's just getting super frustrating. That's the time to get up, and you want to have a cue for getting up as well. So that can be opening the curtains, turning a light on. This is the reason that we're getting up and leaving the room, not just because you woke up and you're full of beans. This has to happen and then we leave the room. So that could be opening the curtains. It doesn't matter if it's light outside or not. You want to just, you really want to just sort of have a big kind of cue for now we're leaving the room. So what you would do, your kiddo wakes up 4:45, you sort of look at the clock and you're just like, oh, it's 4:45. Leave him be as long as you possibly can. So if he's quite happy to hang out for a little bit, yay! That's when you're sort of, getting your head together. Okay, we're getting up. It's going to be a great day. I know it's stupidly early, but we're going to have a good day. And then you're thinking about coffee and all of these gorgeous things. Then when he's getting kind of like quite vocal and he's really letting you know that he's awake, then you're going to go in. And then you're just going to hang out. So you may have got to your acceptable wake up time with just him hanging out, but you can sit, you can feed, but you want to keep it kind of dark. And then when you've got to your acceptable wake up time, or as near to that as you possibly can, then you're going to open the curtains. Okay, now it's time to get up. And then you're going to leave the room. That is going to speed up that whole sleeping in later. It's going to speed it up. But sleeping in later is early morning wake ups miserable because they take so long. Lots of deep breaths and lots of coffee. And I do hope you drink coffee. I really do. I'm not sure. Sometimes people will say, oh yeah, no, I don't drink coffee. How can you not drink coffee? What do you do? People who don't drink coffee, what do you do in the morning? What do you drink? I understand if you drink tea. But what do you drink that gives you that kind? I don't know. I can't even imagine. There's Grace. Hey, Grace. Grace, Rebecca is the best. She helped me with both of my kids since they were babies. Oh my gosh. They're now 4 and 8 and are the best sleepers thanks to her teachings. How on earth are they 4 and 8, Grace? My word. Amanda says coffee is my lifeline. Yeah. Sometimes you feel like you need it like in an IV before you get out of bed. Can we just get that kind of like boost of caffeine before I even get out of bed? That would be nice. Oh my gosh. Megan says her sister-in-law is allergic to coffee. I think she's an alien. I agree. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine being allergic to coffee. I can't. Sounds dreadful. I can't even imagine. Okay, now I did have one question that came in. Here we are. Lulu had a question that came in as I posted asking for questions yesterday. I'm going to have more coffee. It's really cold now, though. I'm not so keen on cold coffee. I'll still drink it, though. My 3-year-old daughter has never slept through the night. We co-sleep and I'm finding it impossible to night wean her. Any suggestions would be gratefully received. Lulu, great. This is a really great question. And you are totally not the only person who has a 3-year-old who has never ever slept through the night. And just a heads up, there are no 3-year-olds who have ever slept through the night and have not woken up. Humans wake up. We all wake up between 2 and 10 times a night. Waking up is normal. The children who sleep through the night don't need help during the night. They're still waking up. So that may help you then look at goals here. Because if you're trying to get a child to sleep through the night and not have any wake-ups, that's going to be impossible to do. But you can get less involved and your child can be more independent. So then when they wake up, they can get themselves back down to sleep. That's what we want. We want them to be able to do this independently. And co-sleeping is completely fine. I'm not sure if you're wanting to change that at all. There's no reason why you should. If you're quite happy to do it, you totally can continue to do it. And you can continue. You can start night weaning if you want to night wean. You can. Or it may be that you just want to reduce down feeds during the night. And that's the way that I'd actually start doing things, is to look at actually working on reducing down feeds during the night. Without just sort of like stopping. Because if you just suddenly stop feeding during the night, you can just imagine what's going to happen. If you stop feeding during the night, just like, okay, I'm not going to feed you anymore. How your 3-year-old is going to feel, very annoyed and upset. I imagine that they're feeding to sleep and feeding back to sleep. And so now they want to go back to sleep. And if you don't feed, then they're not going to be able to go back to sleep. And then they're going to be really upset because they're not going to be able to go to sleep. So what I like to do is like a really gradual, slow process of having your child gradually and slowly become more independent and not just suddenly stopping feeding to sleep or back to sleep. That will be a step, but it is not the first step or even the second step or even in the top 10 steps that you're going to do. The first thing I would start doing, and this is actually really, really powerful, and a lot of times it's kind of dismissed, because it doesn't seem like it's a big enough step. Because when you talk to anyone about, how do I stop breastfeeding? How do I stop feeding at night? Well, just don't do it. And that makes, of course, that makes sense. Don't do it. And then it's going to be, if only it was that easy to just not do it. So what I would do is actually sit up, especially at the beginning of the night, whilst you're feeding your child to sleep. Now, honestly, I have successfully worked with families and we've reduced down all night wake ups, and our strategy was sitting up to feed. This works really, really well with children who are that little bit older. So you're going to just sit up to feed. And what this does is a couple of things. One is that it's not so comfortable for your child to feed. We're not saying, no, you can't feed. We're still letting your child feed, but it's not quite so comfortable for them. We want them to choose to lay down. When you then lay them down and you move them, you wake them up a bit. And I know that just seems like the exact opposite of what we want to be doing. We want them to get to sleep. Yes, we do. But when we wake them up a little bit, they then are doing more of that falling into a deeper sleep themselves without needing to be latched on or without needing to be feeding. So they're doing a tiny, tiny little bit of the falling asleep process themselves. This is something then that we can build on. So I would start sitting up to feed for that first feed of the beginning of the night. Now, depending on the sleep personality, the temperament of your child, depends on then what you may want to do with this, because sometimes people will, depending on kind of how annoyed their child gets, they may want to then lay down and feed and then feed to sleep. It depends on your child. But what you want to do is you want to begin to introduce the sitting up to feed. So you can do that beginning of the night. And then if they get really fussy and are really struggling and they're not falling asleep, or you then sort of need to lay them down but they wake up, you can then lay down and feed them, but we're just introducing the sitting up and feeding part. So you're going to sit up and you're going to feed them, and hopefully they'll then fall asleep. And then after they've been asleep for about 10 minutes, then you want to lay them down. Super stealthy, as stealthy as you can, and then you're going to lay them down. And honestly, if you can get this far, that's amazing. So it may take you a couple of nights to get this far because you're introducing something new, and change is hard for us humans, especially when it comes to sort of a habit and what we're used to doing, which is falling asleep a certain way. So that can make it can be that your child can struggle then with falling asleep because we changed it up a bit. So you want to sit up to do that first feed and then lay them down. What you can then do is start to do the same during the night for just one of the feeds during the night, sitting up and then laying them down. Then you can start to reduce down the amount that you're feeding. You can still hold them, but you're going to try unlatching just a little bit sooner. So then they're needing to do more of that falling asleep process without being latched on. Then you're going to be laying them down. You can start then laying them down a little bit sooner as well. And you can then be helping them just by hands-on, even patting their back, rubbing their back, helping them get down to sleep. Because by doing this, they are doing more of this falling asleep process themselves without needing to be latched on. And that means that they're more independent. So by doing it, you may notice that feeds reduce down. You can have longer time between feeds. You're actually able to soothe your child as they're coming into a light sleep, moving, making a noise, by just being hands-on, because they're now getting used to this a little bit. You can continue then to actually work on getting less and less and less involved by just, one way to do it is just to bother your child as you're feeding them. Works great with older children because they're bigger and they're heavier, and it's just easier for them to get uncomfortable. And you can do that just by fidgeting and moving as you're feeding them. That's keeping them into a lighter sleep. We want them to choose to lay down. That's what we want. We want it that they want to actually lay down in their bed and go to sleep. That's what we want. So you can bother the heck out of them as you're sitting up and feeding. It works really, really well. It works really well. But it's not a quick fix. But as I say, I've worked with families and we've night weaned very successfully by just this was our tactic. It took a while, definitely, but it worked well and was fairly easy. Okay, so then I'm looking, Gabby posted a question which was basically the same thing. So that's on sit up to feed. Really, really good. And I think if you're sitting up to feed, then you are seeing how kind of, you can see that you're beginning to make progress. When you're beginning to make progress, then that's something that you can build on. But when you first start making changes with sleep, everything can really feel really overwhelming, really big, really overwhelming. And it's hard to take a little step in the right direction. And when you see then that you made progress with that, you can then build on it. You can do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's then easier to do than trying to do everything all in one go, which it's just too much. Because when you think about it, you're thinking about your naps, you've got your nighttime sleep, you've got your beginning of the night, you've got your trying to lengthen out naps, you've got all those night feeds during the night, you've got the feeds, you've got the wake ups that aren't really feeds, and then you just know your child is just kind of hanging out and feeding, and it just can feel really overwhelming because there's probably more than 12 hours of your day is sleep. And if you're trying to fix it, it's most certainly overwhelming. Right, I'm going to look for some other questions that came in. Here we go. This looks like let's see. Oh, this is a great question. Kieran has an 18-month-old. Why does my baby during his sleep at night whine and cry when turning over to either his sides or his front or back? This is a great question. So some of us are more vocal than others when it comes to sleeping, and some people will talk as they sleep. Some people will laugh during their sleep. So this happens during when you're a lot of the time when you're dreaming. That's when you'll then sort of maybe talk and things. But when you're coming into a light sleep, which we do when we're moving, we're in a light sleep, then some of us, and a lot of times babies will be quite vocal about it. It doesn't mean your child is in pain. It doesn't mean anything like that at all. They're just in a light sleep, and some people are more vocal than others. I think it's completely fine. If your child is then able to be getting back down into a deeper sleep, it's okay. But sometimes children do cry when they're asleep. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong. If it's a really big cry, there is probably something wrong. But if it's just like that whiny, fussy, I'd wait, just leave them be. If your child then needs some help, then they need help and you can go and help them. But don't help until you feel that you need to. They're just coming up into that light sleep and just moving around, not necessarily anything wrong. Instead of nursing, can I have my husband try and put her down by rocking? Oh, certainly, yes. And actually, your husband is probably going to be more successful than that with that than you would be, because if you were trying to like kind of, you know, stop nursing, then you still have boobs right there. At least then your kiddo knows, if your husband's there, that nursing's not going to happen. So that is actually a great way, if you can, have your partner go in. Now, it's not going to happen quickly. If you spend 5 minutes feeding and your child is asleep within 5 minutes, 5 minutes of rocking is not going to do it. It's probably going to be more like 30 minutes of rocking, and your child may then get down to sleep. So just set realistic expectations here. And have a maximum time, have a cut-off time that you're going to do this for. So it doesn't, because if you say to your husband, okay, you're going to get the baby down tonight and you need to rock them down to sleep. Normally it takes me 5 minutes, but so it might take you a little bit longer. And he's there and you're 20 minutes in and he's there thinking, oh my God, this normally takes 5 minutes and I've been doing this for 20 minutes. I could be here for the entire night rocking and trying to get a baby down to sleep. So have a maximum time that you're going to do it for. It just means that that's going to be kind of your cutoff, and it means that he's not doing this for the entire night. Not that he would, but if you say to him, you're only going to do it, maximum you're doing this for is 45 minutes. And if at 45 minutes you think that she's going to fall asleep, keep going. If at 45 minutes you think that you're still wrestling a bag of snakes, we're done at that point. That's going to be your cutoff. That makes it much easier for everyone. And then what you want to do is when you get to your cutoff point, you want to have a little bit of a break, because you don't want to go straight from trying one thing and then going straight to the other. So if you were starting with some gentle sleep training or whatever, and it's just you get to your cutoff point, and I always advise families to have a cutoff point, then you don't want to go straight from, oh, we were doing this, now we got to a cutoff point, and then just going back to the old way of feeding or rocking or whatever that is. We want to have a bit of a break between the two things happening, because the older your child is, then we don't want them thinking that, ooh, I just need to not go to sleep and then it happen. We want to have that little bit of a break there. So what I would do is I would have you get to your maximum point, and at that point your husband's decided, nope, nowhere near going to sleep right now, and leave the room with her. So they're both going to leave the room, and just have 5 minutes outside of the room, calm, quiet. It's not playtime. We're just going to be hanging out, just, somewhere fairly dim. We still want it to be somewhat nighttime, but a break. We're having a bit of a break. And then come in, maybe do the last step of your routine, and then just feed to sleep. So that could be like, oh, you're going to then scoop her up, maybe read a book, and then feed to sleep. So you've had that little bit of a break there that can be really, really helpful. Now, just because night one, you got to your cutoff point and it didn't work, it doesn't mean that it's going to not work all the time. It totally, probably, definitely is going to work. It just is going to take her a little bit of time to get used to this new thing happening. That can take anything up to a week, depending on your child's sleep personality or their temperament. It can take anything up to a week for that to happen, for them to get used to sort of like, okay, now I know what we're doing. I know what we're doing now. And for them to be able to be kind of relaxed enough to actually be able to fall asleep there. So don't worry if you have night 1, night 2, night 3, then you'll get there. So don't worry, it takes time. With him rocking to sleep, would that create another habit? Yes, it certainly would create another habit, but rocking to sleep is a much easier habit to break than feeding to sleep is. And you can easily work on not easily. It's easier to break that habit than it actually is the feeding to sleep. And this is something that we've started actually doing in Slumber Academy, and I've advised a few families to do this, is that we were trying to reduce down sort of feeding, unlatching a little bit sooner, and we were trying to that's sort of like is one of the steps in Slumber Academy is let's see if we can reduce down the feeding by unlatching a little bit earlier, so your child's doing more of this kind of falling asleep independently. And for some kids this works amazingly well, they're great. Other kids, nope, they are just like wide awake. So what we do then is we've added in a step, which is let's add some rocking in. So right at the end of that feeding they'd start rocking, because rocking to sleep is an easier habit to break. So let me just I have fake baby Grantham here, who's swaddled and ready for sleep. I always don't go anywhere. I don't ever sit at my desk without having a fake baby nearby. So let's just say we're rocking to sleep. Here's Grantham. We've successfully now no longer needs to feed Grantham to sleep. I'm able to just now rock to sleep. So what I can do, it takes 10 minutes of me rocking, quite a big rock, to get him to sleep. And then when he's asleep, then I can stop, and then I can go to the crib and I can lay him down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my plan for stopping rocking him to sleep. So I know it takes him 10 minutes to fall asleep. So right at the end now, for the last 2 minutes, I'm just going to slow the rock up. So maybe not as big of a movement, and it's just going to be a little bit slower. And then I'm going to stop a little bit sooner. So he's doing more of this getting into that deep sleep without the movement or as much movement. So depending on your child, sleep personality, their temperament, depends on sort of what kind of pace you'll do this at. So for some, it's just like, you can just really reduce it down really, really quickly. Others, it's just sort of a real tiny, minuscule little reduction in the amount that you're going to reduce down that rocking. So you're still doing the rocking, but you're just kind of stopping it just that little bit sooner. So your child is then doing more of that falling asleep without then needing the movement. Now, you can see I'm holding Grantham like this, and it depends on how big your child is as to how you're going to, you may hold them like this. I used to hold my youngest, we would sit like this as I sort of get her ready for sleep. But however you're holding your child, you can also then work on, because you can imagine, if you get your child to sleep this way or this way, they're snug against you for one thing. And, you're just kind of like rubbing their back, holding their back. But we want them to be in bed like this. That's a really different feel. And so that's why with a lot of times children will wake up when you then lay them down, because it just feels so very different. So if you're getting your child down to sleep kind of this way and you're reducing down the rocking, you're going to be potentially holding them just at the end for a bit. You can work on getting them kind of a little bit more into that position. So you can do this even they're, on you, but they're in the position it's going to be easier. They're going to get used to then sleeping more. The earlier part of that as they get into sleep on their back. And then you can sort of do your getting up, go into the bed, plonking them down. But yeah, just reduce down the rocking. Rocking is a much easier habit to break than feeding to sleep is. So actually replacing one habit with another is not necessarily a bad thing. It really isn't. So don't feel that it's going to be that it's a bad thing if that's the case. Rocking to sleep is so much easier. So it's always nice to bring Grantham in. I'm not sure why I've got him swaddled right now. Because because I got a swaddle. I think I did. I don't even remember why I swaddled Grantham. But I shall pop him back down. Thank you, Grantham. It's always nice to see you. For the advice and these Q&As, and to go down for her one nap. Yay! Well, I'm glad. Good luck, Megan. Good luck with let me know how you get on. I'm going to be doing the next Q&A is going to be on December the 20th, which is my birthday. Because then I won't be doing one at the end of the month as I normally do. Normally do it the last Tuesday of the month, but I will be doing that on the 20th. We'll have another Q&A. So Megan, let me know how you're getting on. And then any follow-up questions, because that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Okay, let me get another question that came in. It's all rather slow. Okay, this looks like a good one. Oh, this is a great one. Alison had an 8-month-old. My baby's having multiple false starts to sleep, waking up through the night and waking early. Recently was put on the 2, 3, 4 awake window, which helps naps go from 20 minutes to 1 hour. Lovely. How do I help a sleep debt? Stop fighting sleep, false starts. So false starts, really annoying. That's one of the hardest things personally I found with sleep was those false starts that you get where you've gone through that entire routine and you get your child down and then they're awake really darn quickly. Couple of reasons that this could happen. One is that you're still in your daytime mode. So daytime sleep, one area of the brain, nighttime sleep, the other. And until you kind of get kicked into that nighttime bit, you're still in nap time. So it could be that it's a nap. We don't necessarily see this with 8-month-olds, but you can do. So that's a possibility. You can often have a wake up that happens within the first hour. A wake up that happens within the first hour is usually due to your child being too sleepy as you've laid them down. Now, if they were more independent falling asleep, then that oftentimes that just those false starts just disappear. So that could be a possibility. But then there's also that you've got your child to sleep and you've laid them down. And as I mentioned before, this whole sort of trying to wake your child up a little bit, you've actually set them waking up. So they were, grab Grantham again. Here's Grantham. I've just got Grantham to sleep. Yay, he's asleep. So he's going down to sleep. And then, okay, look, you're asleep. And he's maybe not been asleep for very long. He's asleep now, been asleep for a minute. Great, I'm going to go and put him into bed. And I get up and I put him into bed. Okay, night, Grantham. I lay him down into bed. And because he was just in a little bit of a sleep, then he just is going to, he can just wake back up. Because movement is going to start waking your child up. It just is that's just what's going to happen. It's just going to wake your child up because that's what it does. Movement happens. It brings us into a light sleep. It kind of disrupts that sort of falling into a deep sleep. It disrupts. So what you want to do is you want to hold your child for 10 minutes once they've fallen asleep, because then they're 10 minutes asleep. They're 10 minutes into that deeper sleep. And when they're 10 minutes into a deeper sleep, when you've got that movement, then you're going to be more successful being able to lay your child down, because they're going to start coming and waking up a little bit. And then once they've laid down, so you're then laying them down in the crib, you then want to be hands-on because they're beginning to wake up. You want to then be hands-on, so you can do a little bit of movement, a little bit of jiggling, to help them to start to go back down into a deeper sleep. So 10 minutes, holding for 10 minutes, slow, stealthy into bed, and then a minute or two of being kind of hands-on. If your child begins to move and make a noise, that's them coming into a light sleep, and then you may want it. So if you were just, being your hands-on, and you were maybe kind of shushing and jiggling a little bit, and then you stop the shushing, and then you slow up the jiggling. But Grantham starts to move, then I'm going to start the movement again, just help them get back down into that deeper sleep. Because even if you've kind of waited the 10 minutes, but the movement then just starts waking your child up, it may take another 10 minutes for them to wake up, but then they're awake. So you want to make sure that they're going back down into that deeper sleep, so being that hands-on. Any wake up that you get within the first hour, you always want to help with that one really quickly. So don't hang around with that one. That's one that you want to help with really, really quickly, even to the point sometimes that you may actually be even in the room, because that's not one that your child is going to get back to sleep from easily. The quicker that you're helping, the quicker they're back down to sleep. The quicker they will be back asleep, obviously, but it can it can really improve the rest of your night as well, because it can kind of set the tone for the night. That's a big long wake up, then you could be in for a challenging night. If you're able to be in there and help with that first wake up, help get your child back down to sleep as quick as possible, then you can have a much better night because it was less disruption. And less disruption makes for a much smoother night. So sometimes people will, if they know when their wake up's going to happen, and for a lot of times that does happen consistently at about 30 minutes or whatever that time is, that if you see that, then you know that you can kind of be in the room. You can leave, and then you know, oh, are they going to wake up at whatever 30 minutes? I need to be back in the room a few minutes before, because if you can be there before they're beginning to wake up, then you can have a much, you're hovering. The second you see them move, make a noise, then you can have, you can be hands-on, helping them back down to deeper sleep, hopefully catching them before they wake up. But chances are they're still going to wake up at that first wake up, because it's like, you're getting sleep. Oh, look, you're asleep. And then boom, it's a real quick, urgent wake up. We've seen them comment, 3-year-old. Yeah, I think I did. Yes, Lulu, I did answer your question. So you can watch the record. The recording is going to be here for evermore. So I think it was probably at about halfway through, so about 30 minutes in, I probably answered your question then. But yes, some good suggestions there. So definitely watch the recording. The recording is going to be hanging around for a while. I wonder if I should put the recording on my website or something, because if I download the recording and then I put it somewhere, then you can watch it at a faster speed. I talk pretty fast anyway, but when you've got to watch through an entire Q&A, you want to just get to the good bits. And you don't think you can change, if you're watching a video, the recording here, I don't think you can change the speed. And I love to watch a video at 1.5 speed. Let's just get to the point here. So I might do that. I'll post it here if I do. I'll post the link and I'll just put it on my website. I'll download it and post it, and then you can watch it at 1.5 speed if you want to. Double speed if you really, I'm not sure you understand the thing. But I think I'll do that. I'll do that later today. But you can watch it. I think you can even start now. Who knows? Okay, so thank you for all your questions. I'm going to be back. When am I going to be back? The 20th, my birthday. Yay! Normally do the last Tuesday of the month, but I'm going to be not beginning at any mini masterclasses or doing the Q&A later next month, as it's sort of the Christmas New Year kind of thing, and then we'll start back in January. So I'm still going to do the Q&A because I love doing a Q&A. I love doing a Q&A, but we're going to do it on December 20th. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can always just join me then. The link, you can find the link somewhere here on Facebook. There's a form that I have, and if you want to submit a question at any point, then do. It's completely fine. You can do that. You can submit a question at any point, and I'll make sure that gets answered in 3 weeks time, I think it is. You can always send me a message with a question, just saying that this is a question for the Q&A, and then I'll see that as well. If you want to just send a private message, a DM, then you can totally do that as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I will post a little link later. I will get this on my website. I think it'd be nice to have. Have a wonderful, wonderful couple of weeks. I'll be back in 3 weeks for the next Q&A. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.